Level 1, the collector. You are 17. It starts with nothing that feels like a crime. A stack of mail pulled from an unlocked box down the street from your own house because you were bored and curious, and a kid 2 years older than you, a guy named Priest, everyone calls Priest, told you information was worth something if you knew who to sell it to. You don't know who that is yet. You just know how to look. A receipt left on a gas station counter. A name and birth date scrawled on a doctor's office intake form you photograph on your phone while the receptionist steps away. You keep a notebook, not a spreadsheet, an actual paper notebook, because Priest told you paper doesn't get subpoenaed the way a phone does. Advice you don't fully understand yet, but follow anyway because Priest has never steered you wrong on anything else. 3 weeks in, you have 40 names, partial numbers, birth dates, a few addresses. Priest looks through the notebook one evening on his porch, nods slowly, and says the sentence that changes what this actually is. This is worth something, he says. More than you think. You don't ask him how he knows. You've learned by now which questions get you included in things and which questions get you cut out of them. Level 2, the seller. You are 18. Priest introduces you to a forum accessed through Tor, a marketplace with a name that sounds almost corporate. Dark Ledger, where your 40 names become a listing. Personal data bundle, verified $500 for the batch. You watch the payment clear in Bitcoin within an hour of posting. More money than you've made in 6 months of the part-time job you still technically have and haven't quit yet, because quitting would require an explanation to your mother you're not ready to give. You start trading regularly after that. A username, cipherkey_99. That isn't your name and starts to feel more real to you some days than your actual one does. Reputation on the forum works like currency of its own. Buyers leave ratings, vouch for reliability, and you build yours carefully, methodically, the way you used to build a batting average in Little League before you stopped caring about anything that didn't make money. Priest warns you once, casually, almost bored, that everyone on that forum is lying about something. You nod like you already knew that. You didn't, not really, not until 3 months later when a buyer you'd trusted for weeks turns out to be an account run by someone considerably younger than you, a 15-year-old in another state doing exactly what you're doing, and you realize the entire marketplace is built on a foundation of people you will never actually meet or verify, trusting each other just enough to keep the money moving. Level 3, the builder. You are 20. Selling raw data plateaus at a ceiling you didn't expect, and a buyer named Reina, older, careful, someone you've never seen, but who types like she's genuinely impressed by your work, teaches you the next step. Combining a real social security number, usually a child's, sometimes a deceased person's, pulled from an obituary database, with a fabricated name and history to build someone who never existed at all. She calls this synthetic identity work and treats it like a craft. You spend your evenings now building a person instead of collecting one. A fabricated employment history detailed enough to survive a background check. A hometown with a plausible explanation for why there are no old photos. You open your first secured credit card under this fabricated name on a Tuesday and feel something you don't expect. Something closer to pride than guilt, watching an approval come through for a person who doesn't exist and never will. Reina tells you this only works with patience. Months of boring, ordinary transactions before it's worth anything at all. You've never been patient about anything in your life until this. Level 4, the first mistake. You are 21. You open too many accounts too fast under the same fabricated identity, maxing out a card within 3 weeks instead of letting it age the way Reina told you to, and the account gets flagged. Not by police, not yet, just by an automated fraud system that freezes the card and sends you into a 2-day spiral of checking news sites obsessively, certain this is the moment everything ends. It isn't. Nothing happens. The bank eats the loss, writes it off, moves on to the next flagged account in a queue with thousands of others just like it, and you learn the wrong lesson from this the same way you learned the wrong lesson from Priest never getting caught. You learn that consequences here are statistical, not personal. Reina is less forgiving than the bank was. She goes quiet for 6 weeks, cuts contact entirely, And when she finally messages you again, it's short, clinical. You almost cost us the identity. Don't rush the next one. You don't fully understand at the time that us means there's an entire structure above Reina you've never seen. Level 5, the network. You are 23. Reina brings you further in, past just building identities into the actual machinery around them, introducing you to a man who goes by Falcon, who specializes purely in breaches, corporate databases, healthcare records, thousands of identities at once instead of one at a time. You realize watching Falcon work that you were never actually that good at this, not compared to people operating a full tier above you. Falcon hands off a batch of 40,000 records from a retail chain breach, and Reina spends weeks turning a fraction of them into synthetic identities using the exact method she taught you, except at a scale you couldn't have imagined a year ago. You meet Falcon exactly once, a video call with the camera angled specifically so you never see more than his hands. He tells you the breach drew considerably more law enforcement attention than he expected. You feel for the first time genuinely afraid instead of just careful. Level 6, the layering. You are 25. Reina teaches you money laundering next, using one identity to open an account, a second to fund it, a third to eventually cash out, so that no single thread connects the money back to where it actually started. This is slower and considerably more tedious than anything before it. Weeks of small transactions moving between identities you've built specifically to obscure a trail, and you understand now why Reina values patience so highly. Every layer you add is also, she tells you, another point where the whole thing can fail. You ask her once how many layers is enough. She tells you there's no such number, that the people who get caught are the ones who stop adding layers because they got comfortable, not the ones who never had enough to begin with. Level 7, becoming trustworthy. You are 27. A synthetic identity you built 2 years earlier finally matures, 18 months of clean credit history behind it, and a bank extends a $35,000 credit line to a person who has never once physically walked through their door. You watch the approval come through and feel something close to awe at what you and Reina built together out of nothing but patience and paperwork. Cashing it out is the single most dangerous moment in the entire process, Reina warns you. The exact event fraud models are built specifically to catch. You do it anyway, slowly across 3 separate withdrawals over 2 weeks instead of one large one, and it works. And for the first time, you let yourself believe you might actually be good at this. Level 8, the seam. You are 29. A man named Dario, someone lower in the operation than you, someone whose face you've genuinely never seen, gets picked up at an ATM on security footage cashing out one of the identities you built. He's not clever the way you learned to be. He goes back to the same ATM twice in 1 week, wearing the same jacket both times, and investigators pull the footage and have a face within days, even though the identity itself, the fabricated social security number, traces to absolutely nowhere. You realize with real clarity for the first time that the entire system you and Reina built is designed to be a ghost right up until it needs a real human face to physically touch real money. And that human seam is where it was always going to break eventually. Dario doesn't know your real name. He knows Reina's forum handle and roughly what state you operate out of. It's enough to make you stop sleeping properly for the first time since the very beginning. Level 9. What Reina actually was. You are 31. Reina goes dark for good this time. No 6-week silence and return. Just gone. And 3 weeks later, you understand why when a federal indictment becomes public naming a synthetic identity fraud ring operating across 4 states and a cooperating witness described only as an operator whose activity aligns closely with patterns you'd recognize instantly if you let yourself look too closely at the charging documents. You never confirm it's her. You don't need to. You spend the following months doing what you've always done when frightened, working smaller, more carefully, telling yourself you learned enough from her to survive without her, not fully admitting to yourself that everything you know how to do, you learned from someone who just became the reason a case file with your description in it now exists at all. Level 10, the identity you actually kept. You are 34. It happens on an ordinary Wednesday. An agent at your actual front door, your actual name on a warrant built from years of financial forensics, tracing a pattern of transactions back through Dario's arrest, through Reina's indictment, through a version of you that started as a 17-year-old with a paper notebook because a kid named Priest said information was worth something. You think, standing there while they read you your rights about that notebook, whatever happened to it? Whether it's still sitting in a drawer somewhere in your mother's house, 40 names in your own actual handwriting, the last piece of physical evidence you ever created connecting the person you became directly to your real, unfabricated name. You spent years building identities that never existed. You never once considered until exactly this moment, standing on your own actual doorstep in your own actual life, that the only identity you were never able to successfully launder away from every consequence that mattered was the real one you'd been standing inside the entire time. If this one hit different, let me know what story you want turned into the next video.